Here are the sheets I have set up now, and yours should look similar to mine. This is what I did with elevations. I set up the front elevation to 1/4 inch equals a foot scale, dragged and dropped that onto that sheet, and then I created a second elevation sheet, and I set all of these up to 1/8 of an inch equals a foot scale. I do want to just point out when these get brought in, they may not be the scale that you want, so you can double click on the viewport, change the scale here, and then I did have to change the crop region. Also, when these came in, these labels below the views weren't very organized and neat. They were maybe stretched out like this, or they were in an incorrect position like this. So what you're going to have to do once you set the scale correctly is you may need to go in and adjust the crop region and bring that in tighter, and then these labels will be literally all over the place. This one right here, for instance, was way down here when I brought this in. So you're going to have to first of all pick up the label and move it underneath the view, like so. And then if the length of the label is too long, you actually click on the view, and that brings this grip up, and you can move that over. So take the time to set that up and make it look nice and neat. You see that I've got the back view and the left side view side by side because they line up orthographically, and then because we didn't have enough room for this view with the front view, I just stuck the right side view down here. And the last sheet that I have is sections, and I think I ended up setting this at 3/8 of an inch equals a foot scale, and that will fit and be slightly bigger than the 1/4 inch so that we can see our detail components a little bit better when we start to add that kind of information. Alright, so let's go back to the first floor plan, and in the first floor plan I'm just going to show you how you can go about adding dimensions. So I just double clicked inside the viewport to make it active, and I'm going to place the dimensions right here. Oh, by the way, this section that I placed on the sheet now has a coordination to the sheet. So it's showing me that on sheet 5, 05, detail 1, I'm going to see this section. So that happens as soon as you populate these views to sheets. So let's go ahead and add some dimensions. So I'm going to start off by going to the Annotate tab, clicking on the Aligned Dimension tool, and I'm going to start with this front view, and the first thing I'm going to do is get close to where the outside face of stud is, and I'm hitting just by tapping the tab key. That's not the correct, that's the outside face of sheathing. I'm going to tab it again. There's the correct line that I want right there. Click it to go to outside face of stud. And then for the windows and doors, you should have a center line appear. I'm going to do that tab trick here, and make sure you put your cursor inside, not right on the edge of the wall, but inside the wall, and you're going to be more likely to get that line to highlight. And I'm going to keep going here and go right across. So once I've got that string of dimensions, I'm going to place them, about 1/2 an inch or so away from the view. Now, if I'm not happy with the position of the window, let's say the window, for instance, is at 5 feet 3 3/8 of an inch. We don't want to see fractions like this, so we want to correct those. But before you do that, you want to make sure that the overall dimension is correct. So I'm going to add a couple more strings of dimensions first before I make those corrections. I'm going to make this one show us the building offset. So you see I went to that offset, so that's the 28 feet. And actually I didn't mean to do that yet. I wanted to add another string here, so that's okay. You can click on that string that you just created, and we can use Edit Witness Line, and then we're able to continue and add it to the first one. That's way better than doing a separate aligned dimension here and then these aren't aligned anymore. Last string that I'm going to put in here will be the overall dimension from there to there, and Now I can see by looking at the dimensions that all of my dimensions are correct for the overall dimensions. So I know it's not an overall building problem. It's just some of these objects inside that need to be adjusted. So I'm going to take this window and I'm going to set it at 4'6" so it matches the window placement on the other side in the kitchen. And then I'm going to set this door at 10 feet. And I'm going to set this at 8'6". Okay. And that's fine there. I want that centered on that wall. So as you go across, notice I went from left to right, or I went in one direction, and I made moves to things as I went across. Then when you're done, you should have nice, clean, whole foot and inch dimensions, and all of your dimensions should obviously add up to the overall dimensions. So you're going to continue throughout the drawing and add the dimensions as I've shown, including any interior partitions that may need to be added. Alright, so this is what your floor plan ought to look like when it's fully dimensioned. Now notice I just have the overall dimensions here and here. I didn't bother to do them again on this side. You can, however, if you'd like to put the overall dimensions on all four sides. I don't think it's necessary with this size drawing. We do need to make sure you're locating all the door and windows and the partitions. Any partitions that aren't actually touching the outside of the building like these are here, if they can't be dimensioned to the outside, then obviously you've got to create a string of dimensions that locates those on the inside. So you see that I've got this locating this wall right here, 4 feet 6 inches from the outside face of stud, and then I've got this dimension here, which is a little bit redundant, but it does help us to just continue the string so we can identify how long this wall is going to be here that's enclosing that side of the stairs. So now this first floor is fully dimensioned. You would go on to fully dimension the second floor as well. Alright, so the second floor would look like this. We don't need to dimension this part of it. That's not part of this floor. I do want to turn off see how we're able to see what's going on the first floor. That's because the first floor underlay is still in this loft view. So with the view active here, scroll down and turn off under the underlay. We can set that to none and hit apply. So this is what it ought to look like. I do believe there's a window here. Yep, there is. And it's much higher than these windows because it's up in the gable. So we're going to create a unique plan region here so that we can dimension that window. Normally we would deal with this by dealing with the view range here, but what's going to happen is if I change that view range to the height that it needs to be to go through the sill of that window, then these windows are all going to disappear. So we have to deal with this in a separate with a separate tool. Under the View tab, you have a Plan Views above the Create section, and then there is in that area a Plan Region that we want to use. Click on that, and I'm going to just use the rectangle tool to define a plan region that's around the center of that wall, and then hit the checkbox. Now the plan region's not going to really show up, but what it does is it allows us to set a separate view range just in that area. So I'm going to edit that view range, and I'm going to increase it to maybe 6 feet, and or whatever it needs to be in order to go through the sill of that window. So now that I can see that, you can control whether or not this plan region shows. And so I'm just going to tighten this up a little bit, and perhaps yeah, see, if you get a little too close to this edge, then it's not going to show that sill for some reason. It might be that we just have to make it go up a little bit higher. So let me see if I can bring it right tight into the wall and make that 7 feet. No, so there's some effect on whether or not we see that window where that is, and we are going to see a little bit of a blank area right here, but I do believe we can have it so that this doesn't actually print, or it's not actually going to print when we do the print previews on this. But that's okay. More importantly, we got to be able to see that window so we can locate it. So under the Annotate tab, we can now go to Align Dimensions and find our Let's see if we can do it from here. You know what? I'm going to turn the underlay back on just temporarily because I think it was what I was using, yes, to get the dimension to go from the outside face of stud. Perfect. And then we can turn the underlay off. Oh, that's the sheet view. So let me go to the loft view and turn the underlay off. Okay, so that takes care of dimensions on the plans. In the next video, we will tag all the doors and windows and label the rooms.